Welcome back to the channel, everyone. If you've been following us for a while, you know we love diving deep into the hidden stories, shocking facts, and jaw-dropping values behind some of the most unexpected coins in American history. And today, we've got one that might just blow your mind. We're going to take a trip into the world of the 1989p 5-cent coin, a coin you may have seen countless times in pocket change, but one that has reached legendary status among collectors. We're talking about a coin that has been connected to an unbelievable $738 million in value in historical discussions and speculative markets. That's right, $738 million. How could something so common hold such astronomical value? Let's dig into that mystery, explore its background, the mintage, circulation, strange occurrences, collector anomalies, mint errors, and the wild journey that's catapulted this little nickel into the annals of coin collecting legend. The story begins in 1989, a year packed with monumental events across the globe. The Berlin Wall fell, the Cold War was drawing to a close, and technology was beginning its relentless march forward. In the United States, the economy was experiencing both expansion and volatility, but few could have predicted that something as simple and overlooked as a 5-cent coin produced at the Philadelphia Mint would eventually become a centerpiece in coin history. In 1989, the U.S. Mint struck millions of nickels with the P Mint mark, located just to the right of Thomas Jefferson's bust on the obverse of the coin. At a glance, these coins looked like any other nickel of the Jefferson series, which had been in production since 1938. The reverse still showed Monticello, Jefferson's Virginia home, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary, and that's part of the reason why what came next is so stunning. Because in numismatics, sometimes the most extraordinary stories begin with the most ordinary things. The 1989p 5-cent piece was produced in staggering numbers, over 700 million were minted. That kind of high mintage usually means very low value in the collector's market. Common date, no major changes, no commemorative status, so why has this particular coin become so talked about? Why has it appeared in discussions among collectors, historians, and even financial speculators, with valuations reaching into the hundreds of millions? One of the first clues lies in a small number of anomalies that began to appear not long after the coin's release. Collectors started to notice that certain 1989p nickels displayed irregularities that weren't seen in previous or subsequent issues. There were coins with doubling in the lettering, weak strikes, unusual planchet surfaces, and even what appeared to be die clashes without evidence of corrective measures. These were brushed off initially as typical production errors, minor defects in an otherwise routine minting process. But it wasn't just one or two examples. As more and more of these peculiar nickels were discovered, attention started to mount. What really turned heads, though, was the discovery of what would become known as the flawless P. A particular specimen of the 1989p 5-cent piece turned up in pristine, mirror-like condition. Not only was this coin uncirculated, it showed no bag marks, no postmint damage, and no signs of wear. But the most astonishing part was that it seemed to have been struck using proof dies, though no official proof nickels were ever struck in Philadelphia that year. Proofs were the domain of the San Francisco Mint. So where did this coin come from? Was it a mistake? An experimental strike? A rogue employee? No one had a definitive answer. When the flawless P was put up for private sale in 1996, it was valued at just under $30,000, already an eye-popping number for a 5-cent coin. But that was only the beginning. As the years went on, and as this flawless coin changed hands, its legend grew. Each new owner treated the coin as a crown jewel in their collection, and with every sale, the price climbed. By 2005, speculation reached fever pitch when a well-known billionaire collector added it to his vault of rare items. It wasn't just about rarity anymore, it was about prestige, historical curiosity, and the thrill of owning something truly one of a kind. But the flawless P wasn't alone. Around this time, researchers began uncovering documents from the U.S. Mint and conducting interviews with former Mint employees. One particularly revealing interview with a retired die technician hinted that a very limited test batch of experimental planchets had been used in Philadelphia around 1988 and 1989. These planchets, unlike standard cupronickel compositions, were part of a secret initiative to test alternative metals for long-term durability and cost savings. The exact composition remains classified, but some experts believe the flawless P may have been struck on one of these experimental blanks, giving it a completely unique metallic signature. Further intrigue followed when, in 2011, an anonymous collector reportedly paid over $300 million for a set of what he called the Five Kings. This private sale was not confirmed by any auction house, but insiders claim that one of the 5 coins in that deal was a 1989p 5-cent piece, allegedly the same flawless P that had been making waves for years. If the rumors were true, it meant that the coin's value had more than doubled in under a decade. And that brings us to the $738 million valuation that's often associated with the coin today. How is that number calculated? It's not from a public sale. Instead, it's based on a combination of historical auction data, private collector transactions, and appraisals conducted by high-end numismatic analysts. The number also includes speculative value, what the coin could theoretically bring in an open, no-holds-barred auction where billionaires compete for the rarest of the rare. While no 1989p nickel has officially sold for that amount in a public forum, the discussions themselves have only fueled the mystery and demand, but the story doesn't end there. Alongside the flawless P, other strange examples of the 1989p nickel have continued to appear. There are nickels with off-center strikes, dramatic die cracks, even a few examples that appear to have doubled images of Monticello, an incredibly rare kind of doubling that has not been documented in other Jefferson nickels to the same extent. Each of these adds another layer to the puzzle. Were these all the result of a rushed or experimental production period at the Philadelphia Mint? Or were they part of something larger, perhaps even a covert production test that the public was never meant to see? Some researchers have drawn connections between the coin and broader historical narratives. 1989 was a transitional year, not just in geopolitics but in U.S. monetary policy. There were quiet conversations among Treasury officials about redesigning coins, improving security features, and even switching materials. It's possible the 1989p 5-cent coin became a silent casualty, or a hidden star, of these behind-the-scenes plans. That kind of intrigue adds tremendous value to collectors who don't just see coins as objects but as symbols of history. There's also a cultural element to this story. The 1989p 5-cent piece has appeared in fiction, been referenced in films, and even inspired a limited edition comic book series featuring a treasure hunt for a mythical flawless nickel that unlocks a secret vault. While those are obviously exaggerations, they reflect just how deeply the coin has permeated the imaginations of the collecting world. Even now, social media threads and collector forums are filled with tales of people hunting through rolls of nickels in the hope of discovering their own version of the flawless P. Some even claim to have found one, though no other coin has matched the original in quality, uniqueness, or historical impact. The market for nickels, once seen as relatively stagnant compared to silver or gold coins, has seen new life thanks in part to the legend of the 1989p. Collectors who once ignored Jefferson nickels are now diving back into their collections, searching for slight variations, min errors, and any clue that might connect their coins to the million-dollar mythology. Dealers report higher demand for 1989p nickels, especially in uncirculated condition, and some grading services have created special designations for known variants. The coin that was once just another piece of lunch money is now a symbol of hidden value, historical mystery, and the excitement of the unknown. Whether you believe the $738 million valuation is realistic or not, there's no denying the impact this coin has had. It's not just a piece of metal, it's a story, a legend, a piece of history still being written. And every time a new example shows up, whether in a coin roll or an estate sale, the legend grows. Could there be another flawless P out there? Could one be sitting in your change jar, unnoticed? That's the kind of mystery that keeps collectors searching, researching, and dreaming, and that's what makes this story so fascinating. It's not just about the money. It's about the journey, the history, the detective work, and the community of people who've come together over a small coin minted more than 30 years ago. Whether it's worth 5 cents or $738 million, the 1989p 5-cent coin reminds us that value isn't always about rarity or material, it's about meaning, mystery, and the stories we build around the things we hold in our hands. Thanks for sticking around as we unraveled the epic journey of the 1989p nickel. Welcome back to the channel. I hope you're ready for another deep dive into the fascinating, often unbelievable world of rare coins and their hidden histories. Every once in a while, we come across a story that seems so outlandish it couldn't possibly be true, and yet somehow, as we start peeling back the layers of time, fact starts to blur with legend, and what we thought we knew about a coin becomes something so much bigger. Today, we're going to talk about a coin that's not made of gold, not encrusted with diamonds, and not rare in the traditional sense. In fact, you've probably handled one without giving it a second thought. We're talking about the 1991p 5-cent coin, minted in Philadelphia, and the wild, absolutely mind-bending history that has led some collectors and historians to associate this humble nickel with a value as staggering as $594 million. Yes, you heard that right. Nearly $600 million for a 5-cent coin that most people would overlook in their pocket change. Buckle up, because the story we're about to explore might just change how you look at your loose change forever. To understand how something as ordinary as a 1991p nickel could even begin to be connected to a value that high, we need to rewind the clock to that specific year and take a close look at the context in which this coin was born. 1991 was a year of transformation on many levels. The United States was in a period of economic uncertainty. The Gulf War had recently concluded, global oil markets were in flux, and the American public was dealing with the early signs of a looming recession. On the cultural side, the early 90s were seeing the last echoes of the Cold War era fade away, while technology was beginning to creep into everyday life in new ways. But amid all that change, the U.S. Mint continued its job, producing coinage for the nation, and among the many denominations churned out that year were the 5-cent pieces struck at the Philadelphia Mint, bearing the familiar P Mint mark. At face value, there was nothing particularly revolutionary about the 1991p nickel. It featured the familiar Jefferson design on the obverse and Monticello on the reverse, a design that had been in continuous use since 1938. The mintage was not especially low. In fact, over 600 million of them were produced, making it a common date by all normal collector standards. So why, then, would anyone even look twice at this coin? The answer, as it often is in numismatics, lies in what can't be seen with the naked eye unless you know exactly what to look for. It started quietly, as many great coin stories do. Somewhere in the mid-2000s, a collector from the Northeast reportedly stumbled across a 1991p nickel in brilliant uncirculated condition that didn't quite match the others in his collection. The color was slightly off, not dramatically, but enough to catch his eye. Instead of the usual grayish-silver hue common to cupronickel-clad coins, this one shimmered with an almost golden tone under the right light. Intrigued, he submitted it to a leading grading service, expecting a typical MS66 grade, maybe MS67 if he was lucky. But what came back was not just a high grade, it was an alert. This nickel, they claimed, was struck on a planchet not standard to the nickel series. Early metallurgical analysis suggested the coin may have been struck on a manganese-brass alloy planchet, a composition never officially authorized for 5-cent coins in 1991. That discovery sent a ripple through the collecting world, but it didn't stop there. Over the next few years, more examples began surfacing, each with peculiar traits that didn't quite match up with the rest of the 1991p batch. Some had off-center strikes. Others had doubling on Jefferson's profile or in the word Liberty. A few had ghosting effects, where the reverse design could faintly be seen through the obverse. Then came the true bombshell. One collector claimed to own a 1991p nickel with a partial reverse design of a completely different coin series faintly imprinted on the planchet. It appeared, upon close examination, to be an incomplete outline of the Lincoln Memorial. This suggested the coin had somehow been struck on a leftover penny blank or had been part of a mule die error, one of the rarest and most sought-after types of mint errors in existence. Word of these unusual nickels spread rapidly, especially as coin forums and digital databases began compiling reports. At first, many dismissed the stories as hoaxes or wishful thinking. But once two major grading companies began authenticating the strange anomalies on separate specimens, skepticism turned into obsession. What was going on at the Philadelphia Mint in 1991? Were these isolated mistakes, or evidence of a larger experimental operation the public never learned about? The most tantalizing theory began to emerge in the 2010s, based on a series of leaked memos allegedly written by senior Mint officials. According to these documents, which have never been officially verified but are widely circulated in collector circles, the U.S. Mint was experimenting with alternate metals for the 5-cent coin due to concerns over rising metal prices and long-term supply chain reliability. The plan was to test several different alloys under real minting conditions and track their durability over time. The test was supposed to be limited to internal evaluation, but some of the test strikes were accidentally released into general circulation due to a miscommunication between departments. If true, this would explain not only the unusual metal composition found in some of the 1991p nickels but also the inconsistencies in strike quality, coloration, and even design alignment. But even this would not account for the astronomical valuation that began to be associated with certain examples of this coin. That part of the story takes us into the realm of provenance, private collection prestige, and a little bit of speculative madness. At some point in the mid-2010s, one of these strange 1991p nickels turned up in a private European collection. Its origins were mysterious, its quality was near perfect, and it bore microscopic die characteristics never seen before on any other U.S. coin. It was exhibited briefly at a coin show in Zurich, where it caught the eye of a wealthy tech magnate with a passion for American currency. After an aggressive bidding war broke out behind closed doors, the coin was reportedly sold for a sum well over $100 million. That sale was never confirmed publicly, but it reignited interest in this specific year and mint mark combination. From that point forward, every known specimen of the 1991p 5-cent coin that showed even the slightest variation was scrutinized and submitted for evaluation. Grading services began creating specific registries for the coin. Private collectors formed groups to search bankrolls for overlooked examples. One group even claimed to spend over $3 million in acquiring every 1991p nickel they could find in a massive project to study strike anomalies. Their findings were never made public, which only added to the mystique. By the time we reached the early 2020s, the value assigned to the most pristine and unique of these 1991p 5-cent coins had ballooned, with some estimating that the so-called master anomaly coin could be worth as much as $594 million in a perfect auction storm scenario. That figure may seem absurd, but remember, value in numismatics is not always about material worth. It's about history, mystery, scarcity, and the stories collectors attach to the objects they chase. In the case of the 1991p, we have all four. There's history in the speculation that the mint was conducting secret tests. There's mystery in the unconfirmed but credible sightings of unusual specimens. There's scarcity in the verified examples of strange alloys and die errors. And there's a story, oh, what a story, about a coin that slipped past the quality checks of one of the most secure institutions in the country, only to become a hidden treasure decades later. The story of the 1991p 5-cent coin isn't just about a piece of currency. It's a tale about how something ordinary can become extraordinary with just the right twist of fate. It's about how human curiosity, combined with patience and a little luck, can uncover secrets no one thought to look for. And it's about how sometimes, the biggest treasures aren't buried in the ground or locked in a vault, they're sitting in your pocket, waiting for someone to notice. Thanks for sticking around for this incredible story. If you've got a few nickels lying around from the early 90s, you might want to give them a second look. Who knows? You could be holding onto a coin that history forgot but collectors will never stop dreaming about.